Hello and welcome to Speaking Spirit, where we talk about all things spiritual. Your host, John Moore, is a shamanic practitioner and spiritual teacher. And now, here's John.
Hey everybody, we have a very, very special episode today. And I'm recording this in video as well as audio. So you'll also be able to check this out on YouTube once it gets up there. And today I have a very, very special guest, a dear friend of mine, and also a partner in an endeavor which we're going to talk about, which is pretty exciting. And we're going to talk all about community, spiritual community, and shamanism. And so stay tuned. But without further ado, my guest today is my friend Mary Katherine Spain. She is, I don't know, I'll let you describe yourself a little bit, but you are a shamanic teacher and practitioner like myself, and probably a bazillion other How would you describe yourself, Mary Katherine?
Oh, wow. I think from an archetypal point of view, I would say I'm a creatrix because I like to create things, whether it's classes or ceremony or shamanity. Just a lot of cool collaborations going on in my life right now. As you know, John, my background is in shamanic technique and skills. I also have a Reiki background, and in my healing sessions, I tend to sort of mix the two. I call it enlightened energy work because I honestly never know if it's a shamanic thing coming through or if it's Reiki or if they're just dancing together. I also get a lot of intuitive hits during a healing session. And so I think somebody described that to me as, you're an intuitive healer. And I was like, oh, well, I've never heard of that before, but okay. And so, yeah, I do that. I also am a writer. I've written a memoir and a novel. They're not published, but I have written them. And I'm working on a sort of a guidebook that explains and interprets the 9 pillars of the divine feminine, which is the name of my business, 9 Pillars Healing. And the 9 pillars are, I guess you could say, a way to embody the principles of the divine feminine as downloaded to me from Athena. So she's one of my guides. And I want to say the new moon in October 2018. Why do I remember that? Because when you get a download from Athena that encompasses the 9 pillars of the divine feminine, you don't forget what day it was. And she started telling me that these are the principles that we must, man and woman must start to embody in order to bring not only the earth back to balance, but to bring humanity back to balance. So I went with that and renamed my business from Clan of Origin Healing to 9 Pillars Healing. And so I'm writing that book as well right now. I'm on chapter 5. I'm looking at my to-do list over here. Up to chapter 5 on that. And then I also run a small farm with my husband, Michael, here in Hollis, Maine.
Yeah, I was going to say, you are the busiest human being I know, probably. Creatrix is a good word, because you always seem to have something interesting going on, something different. You do a lot of stuff, which I think is really cool. And if anybody has never sat down to write or try to write a book, gosh, what an undertaking that is. I also have a couple books in the works, and I wrote something non-spiritual in 2016 now, as a co-author, and wow, what a lot of work.
We could have a whole other podcast on that process, right?
Yeah, for sure. And We've known each other at least a few years. I think we must have met in a class somewhere, if that is correct.
I want to, I think it may have been at a solstice gathering at the Maine Audubon. Do you remember that?
Yes, I absolutely do remember that. Yeah, it was a winter solstice
The winter solstice
gathering at
ceremony.
the
Yes.
Maine Audubon, because I had done a but I think we met before that, didn't we? At in one of Dory's classes or something. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't
Maybe.
know.
Maybe, but yeah, I was definitely at that winter solstice gathering at the Audubon. It was a fun. We did a despacho,
Yes.
and there was a big fire in the back. I took some cool photos of the fire. There was like dragon shapes coming out of the fire, and
Yeah,
it
that
was
I had never done anything like that at the Maine Audubon, and I was very excited that they were hosting something like that, So
yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, it's a cool place. So Maine, if you're not familiar, because we have people listen all over the world here. Maine's in the northeast of the U.S. It's very rural and forested. We have a couple of small cities and lots of towns. And the Maine Audubon is just in this really beautiful area in Falmouth, Maine, and their facility there is super pretty. Nice place to go for a hike, and or I guess people snowshoe there, and I don't know if they cross country ski and stuff too. But there was a solstice event with another shamanic teacher. I don't know how many years ago that was now. There's a few.
That, speaking of what we have in Maine here, I would like to offer. I feel so deeply grateful that there's such an active and vital shamanic community here in Maine. Do you find that it's sort of the primo top notch as far as shamanic communities go?
Yeah, it's so strange, given that we are such a small state with such a small population, and finding not just the amount of shamanism going on here, and the number of shamanic practitioners here in Maine is huge, but also some really amazing teachers here.
Yeah, right.
So great teachers, great community. There's lots of events going on here. I have tons and tons of shamanic friends from Maine, and I'm glad you brought up the word community, because that's kind of what we're gonna talk about today. But yeah, when I started out in shamanism, I got a message from spirit. It was very clear. It was actually verbal, that said you need to study shamanism. And I had no idea. I didn't know really what shamanism was or anything. And my first thought was, I live in Maine. How's that going to happen? I don't live in Peru. I don't live in Mongolia. How am I going to learn shamanism here in Maine?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, this is a great place to learn shamanism. There's so much going on here. And I know people from, so I have students all over the world, and I have clients all over the world, as I know you do as well. And even in some places I find, even especially in big cities, I've students in New York and Las Vegas and California, and clients all over, and they're like, I don't know anyone else. I don't know a single soul who practices shamanism other than me.
Right.
And that feels really weird to me, given given the bounty of community that we have here in our tiny little state.
Yeah, right. And I also think that it's probably, not the first thing that you offer to someone when you meet them, or, you don't like advertise on a t-shirt, I practice shamanism. It's coming around to, I think, be more readily acceptable, and more importantly, maybe more understood on a vast level of people. It used to be, 20 years ago, something that, you would never, I used to work at a medical office. You would never mention at, the office, oh, on the weekends I go drum and, journey and meet my power animal. Like people would be like, what? And I think that's changing. Do you?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's interesting, the people who contact me for shamanic services, shall I say, come from such a wide background. It's surprising. Some I have to be careful I don't give away personal details of clients or anything, but the fact that people reach out to me for all kinds of things. Like I'm doing a ceremony. I'm not performing a wedding. I can perform weddings, but I'm performing a ceremony for a wedding later this year, and as part of the whole wedding weekend thing, they wanted somebody to come up and do ceremony and blessing and that sort of thing. And this is like somebody who's an ad exec from the, not even from this state. They happen to be getting married here. And, people from all walks of life now are learning. It's not just us weirdos in the woods with our drums and
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
exactly.
And
Which is
yeah,
great.
it is becoming better known and more widely accepted. It can be a little hard for people to get their brains around because shamanism isn't a religion, right? So people want to, because it's spiritual and it is very involved. It is my spiritual practice is shamanism. Yes, there's stuff blended from my ancestral cultures in there, but it's not like I go to church and there's an organized thing. And so that can be a little hard for people who grew up in a Western world to get their brains around a little bit, where our spiritual life tends to be very separate. I grew up going to church on Sundays, right, with my grandmother and then with my mom, and that was it, right? That was your spiritual
Mhm.
thing that you
And
did
so you
2
got
hours
an
of Sunday.
hour of spirit every week, right?
Right, an hour to two of spirit every week, and then you went home and ate a roast beef or something, right?
Great dinner, yes. Oh my God, yes.
that was kind of it. And I know tons of people who that's their, that's still how they are, but that's normal for kind of, I don't want to say how I grew up in a normal world. I don't want to say like my way is the way, but in my experience, that is a very normal experience in this culture that's kind of it. So for something, for people who don't know, when you get into shamanism, it starts living through you more than you're
Yes,
doing something,
yes,
right?
absolutely. It's definitely more visceral, and there's like I am fond of saying the church is the land. Like when I walk my land, that mantra always comes up: the church is the land, the church is the land, the church is the land. And it makes so much sense to me. It's for thousands and thousands and thousands of years before Jesus showed up, they were worshiping outside, and it wasn't just Sunday at 11 o'clock. It was for several occasions, and of course seasonal things would happen, the stars, all kinds of interactions with the natural world in a dynamic way that created what the spiritual juice of their lives. So that resonates with me. I feel I too was raised in a Baptist, and both Baptist and Presbyterian household in North Carolina in the 70s. So
Mhm.
yeah, we we went to church every week, if not twice a week. Sometimes there was Wednesday night, fellowship.
Mhm.
And although I don't go to church now, I'm actually so grateful that as a child I got the foundation that being spiritual was important. Like that was something that that we would not be sacrificing You know, like my dad would have to be really, really, really sick not to go to church. We were there every week.
Hmm.
And so it imprinted on me that, you know, paying attention to devotion and sacredness and song and ways to pray and ways to do fellowship, it did imprint me hugely. So I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, I am as well. And though I don't, I don't go to church, I don't identify as Christian. I certainly appreciate my Sunday school background. My grandmother was a Sunday school teacher. My mother is a Sunday school teacher, where she lives now in the South. And my grandmother was a Sunday school teacher. She had a great deal of influence on my thinking about spirituality. And I've told the story before. My grandmother, one of the most influential things anybody had ever said to me in my life about spirit, and my grandmother is a very, very religious person. Somebody asked her about heaven and hell, and she said, when I'm angry with somebody, when I'm feeling hateful feelings, when I'm you know just not treating another person like they're a human being, and whatever, I'm in hell then. Like, that's hell for me. That's right here, right now. But when I'm kind, and when I'm loving, and when I'm um being beneficent towards other people, that's when I'm in heaven, right here, right now. And so I wasn't thinking about I'm going to get my reward when I'm dead kind of thing. It was very much about how we create heaven and hell for ourselves right here in this lifetime.
So beautiful. Oh my God, I love that. I've got a
Yeah.
tear in my eye actually. Just
Yeah, and my grandmother's about to turn 106, so she's
oh,
clearly doing something right. I will say, here's a secret. Never, I don't know if this is a secret, but never touched a drop of alcohol or smoked in her life, and eats oatmeal every single day for 106 years. So I swear the Quaker Oats people should sponsor my grandmother.
yeah,
It's a
definitely. Wow.
106.
Good,
Yeah, she'll be 106 next month.
good for her. That's some
Great.
longevity right there.
Yeah. I hope, I'm just, fingers crossed I got those genes. I'll be around for a while.
Right.
But one of the things that I noted that, just coming back to community, that was always really important for my grandmother and my mother, who are big churchgoers, was, yeah, you go to the service, whatever, and you do your Bible study and all of those things. But it was a social outlet, and is a social outlet for them. And it is a community. And I know, so my mom lives, in South Carolina. I live in Maine. It's quite a long distance. And she's obviously older. She's in good health and whatever, but my stepdad's had some issues. My grandmother lives with her, has had, certainly she's 106 and has had issues. And I would be much more concerned and worried about her if she didn't have the community of her church around her.
Yes. Yes.
And so these are people who will, in an instant drop whatever and come to help if help is needed. And there are people who will, if my mom's doing something, will look in on my grandmother, or, all of these kinds of things. And when my mom lived up here in Maine, that was a huge, huge community. And I always liked that part. When I did go to church, I wasn't as I liked sleeping in on Sundays. I wasn't always that great about it especially when I got old. When I was a kid, there was no choice, but when I got older, I liked to sleep in. But I like the fact that there was that component, like you went and you did the service, and then there was always, what did they call it? Fellowship. There was always fellowship afterwards, where people gathered and just talked. And I don't know, I don't know how people do shamanic gatherings in other places. But around here, there is always that component. There's always we're gonna eat lunch together. We're gonna hit the snack table to get. Snack tables are big in shamanism, by the way. Always have snacks, and spirit loves chocolate. I always tell people.
Yes, yes. I was just thinking, John, while you were talking about community, my good friend Paul, who lives right around the corner here in Leamington, he and myself and Amy, who all studied with Dory Cody, one of our main teachers here in Maine. Paul and I and Amy decided that we would create a monthly group that would meet, so we wouldn't have to keep going to pay different teachers to sit in circle. Like, it was the idea of like, we're going to create a learning space, but also the fellowship space. We're going to base it on shamanism, meaning the prerequisite was that you had to know how to journey, and you had to be able to physically get to Leamington, because we met at Paul's house. He lives on a beautiful piece of property. I don't know if you've ever been there, John. It is gorgeous.
I haven't.
One side of the property is the Ossipee River, and it meets up with the Saco. And so we called the group Confluence, because these two rivers converged with each other in a confluence. And I'm getting chills just talking about it, because it was a very powerful spot to hold, sacred space and time together. So we would meet on Sundays at 12, and we would end around 2:30 or 3. We'd have an opening fire. We would have counsel and check-in. We'd do a journey or maybe 2. We'd talk about the journeys, and then we would eat. It was a potluck. Everybody brought something to eat. And oh my goodness, it was amazing how big it grew. Like, that was in November of 2012. And although I don't go every single month anymore, that group is still going strong.
Wow, that's amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And so eating after you do a bunch of shamanic work, I feel like it not only grounds you. When we commune with each other, when there's food involved, we are like nourishing our bodies, but also doing something that everybody needs to do. Like, it's relatable. Like, I brought this. How did you make that? Oh, this is so tasty. Oh, like, it's the glue sometimes. Food is love, right? Food is love.
Well, I think about how many spiritual traditions involve involve food, involve eating, right? Eating or drinking or both, from communion to traditional feasting to what do they call them, blots in Scandinavian religion, to all kinds of things that involve feasts, right? Feasts are a big deal, have always been a big deal, pre-Christian, Christian. There's the breaking of fasts in Islam. There's and I forget what that is called. In Judaism, certainly there's the Passover Seder. There's all kinds of sacred traditions have the sharing of food or some sort of consuming something, eating something as part of spiritual practice. And I do think that it is one way to embody spirit, that the food that you're sharing obviously in communion gets transubstantiated right into the actual body of Christ and blood of Christ. But it's imbued, when you're sharing a meal after doing something sacred, it's imbued with that energy as you describe it. You're nourishing your body and you're nourishing your spirit as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I want to go back to the idea. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I love to cook. So it's always fun to show up with something that I know is like one of my, favorite recipes or something that now came out of the garden. In fact, John, you would appreciate this. We're starting a YouTube channel for the farm, and the videos are me making recipes from items out of the farm share box. So like you get the farm share, yeah, people get the farm share box and they're like, oh, what am I going to do with collard greens? So now the box comes with a QR code that takes you to our YouTube channel, and I'm cooking kitchen. So it's a live recipe, if you will. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I love that. I'll have to check that out because I don't think I've ever cooked collard greens. So if you have a collard green recipe, I will definitely check that out. And I'll say that you make a mean puttanesca. We had puttanesca at Mary Katherine's not that long ago, and she gave me a jar to bring home, which was delightful, and I got to share with my children, who were like, "This is awesome! You have to figure out how to make this." So so thank you for the puttanesca.
I am happy to share that recipe. It's really easy.
Yeah. My kids they're like, "This is so good." So it was great that I got to share that with them as well.
I bet your girls like the little spice factor in that one. Did they like the
Yeah.
spice?
Yeah. They do like, it's interesting. I always like spicy food. I can't eat it as spicy as I used to now that I'm getting older, but the girls like super spicy stuff. So yeah, they do like the spice factor in there. So anything like puttanesca or fra diavolo sauce, or whatever is.
I can't do that one, but yeah.
Yeah, we started them when they were first able to eat solid food. We started them on Indian food quite early, so they got used to having lots of different spices and stuff. And of course, we always had they're half Filipina, so they lots of Filipino food as well. So it's good stuff. But I want to go back to something you mentioned, just the idea of sitting in circle, right? And some people might, obviously you can get the idea of people sitting around in a circle. But when we say that in, referring to like a shamanic gathering, when we sit in circle, and well, I'll just add that it doesn't always have to be physical. You can sit in circle virtually and at a distance from people. And but anyway, I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about what it means to sit in circle, not just sitting physically in a circle, but what do you do? Like, what's and I know, but this is for my, obviously I've sat in a few circles, but for people who might not know.
Right. A couple of things come to mind, actually. First of all, I think when you create sacred space, we all have our, particular protocols and rituals to create sacred space. For me, that would be burning some sweet grass and sage, or maybe some sage and cedar. I was told once by an elder over in New Hampshire, a Native American elder, that to balance the masculine and feminine principles inside, you want to burn sage and cedar together. And I did not know that. The cedar is for the feminine and the sage is more masculine. So now, after that conversation with Grandmother Sasa, I try to burn sage and cedar together. Anyway, I then, call in the directions, and that sets the space for, the deep dive, the speaking from the heart. And that was the other point I wanted to bring up. I just took a training with Animas Valley Institute that focused on the art of counsel, which, people have been sitting around in circles for long time, eons. And again, Native American tradition, counsel is speaking from the heart, listening with the ears of the heart, being brief, and then being spontaneous. So those are the four cornerstones of counsel the way that I just learned it from the Animas Valley Institute. So I kind of have started to incorporate that with at least check-in, because sometimes, you know, if you have a big group of folks sitting around for sacred space, and maybe you're going to do a ceremony, maybe you're going to journey together, you do want to do a little bit of check-in, because you know, it's rough sledding out there. People have a lot on their mind, and you have to clear that out in order to show up more soul-filled, show up more able, and I want to say vulnerable to take your rightful seat at the spirit table. Like, the guides want the full you, and so if you come in with a bunch of frustrations and complaints, and maybe you're tired, you know, you just have to do that check-in to get things off your chest and off your mind, and then something sort of settles. Right after check-in, you move into a different speed, a different mode of communication, and relating to each other, more importantly, right? Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think a lot about ceremony. I'm a bit of a ceremonialist, and then one of the things I love to do is design ceremony, and rituals as part of ceremony are really important. And as you alluded to, there are a number of rituals that are performed in the ceremony. I guess we could call the overarching structure of a shamanic circle as a ceremony. And there are rituals in there. So the first is setting out sacred space. So that is both saying this area that we're sitting in is now an area where we're doing sacred work. The time that we've entered, we've now begun to do sacred work. So this really, for me, sets the psycho-spiritual tone that we are about to do something sacred. It's why there are, in almost any spiritual system where there is devotional work or anything like that, there is a separate space where that's done. There's a church, but even within the church, there's an altar, and there's, a dais, and, all of these things. And so there's that. There's the setting up of sacred space as a way to sort of set intention. Okay, now we've left the ordinary world, and now we're entering into the spiritual world, and we're using the metaphors of time and space to work with our psychology there. And you made a really good point about check-in. So if people don't know, what happens in a lot of circles is we'll just go around the circle. Sometimes someone will pass a talking stick or something, and people will just take turns saying usually what's going on with them. And it, particularly if you're a group that meets regularly, you're checking in with each other. This is what's going on with me. Or if it's a group that's never met before, sometimes you'll introduce yourself. My name is John. I'm from here, blah, blah, blah. And I think you hit on something really important here. It's another way to kind of unburden, unload, sort of like, okay, now we're going to do something sacred, but I've got all this junk going on. I need to get it out there so that I can set it aside for a moment. And I'm reminded of, so I trained in martial arts for decades. I taught for a couple of decades. And, we would always bow in when you come into, I studied Japanese martial arts. You bow when you come into, you take off your shoes. Super important, right? You don't wear your street shoes in the training area. That's not just for cleanliness. It's symbolic of, I'm leaving the outside world over here with my shoes. I'm not tracking in the energy of the world into this space, which is sacred. And now I'm bowing in, I'm beginning and entering into sacred space. So there's sacred space that's marked by physical location, it's marked by a specific time period, and it's marked by behavior. And there is a setting aside of
Yes.
the stuff.
That's really, I love that. I love Japanese culture anyway, and I love the idea that your shoes are going to track on energy. I've never actually thought about that. That's really interesting. I also wanted to say while you were talking about check-in, it also gives people that are listening an opportunity to witness. I feel like with our modern culture and, the cult of me and all of the, dizzying selfies and all of this business about sort of, I don't know, the superficial visuals that we are inundated with, people have lost the art of deep listening um, and witnessing, like just sitting and listening to someone's story or where they're at builds your compassion muscle, right? And to not sit there and think about, oh, what am I going to say when it comes to me? Like just to truly drink in another person's um, reality and what they're sharing, hopefully from their heart, right? Like the check-in is not only about unburdening, like, oh, what's going on with me in my life, but things that are deeply troubling to people, right? They can share that in that sacred space. Now that we've set the sacred space, things can be said that you can't just say in passing in other venues. So the deep listening and witnessing, I feel like, creates a certain energy in the group and allows other people, as they listen, to dive even deeper, to reveal even more.
Yeah. I feel like we could do an entire podcast episode on witnessing, and probably we should at some point, because it's um it's an incredibly important topic, and the effect of witnessing on both the person being witnessed and the person doing the witnessing is, you almost can't describe how powerful an effect this is. It seems really strange, but just being fully present with somebody, and as you alluded to, it's not that easy in today's world because we don't do that. Most of us are inundated with social media, like these sound bites, and we're listening to respond, and the world is so fast. We don't just sit around and listen to each other's stories anymore, or that often, most of us anyway, in the world that we live in. And, just speaking from the heart and speaking one's truth to people who are just accepting without judgment and sitting and holding sacred space. And one of the things that I learned from the teacher we have in common, Dory Cody, is in circle, we don't rescue other people. So I might be having an incredibly emotional share, right? Something might have come up, even not just in the check-in, but even, as we're doing ceremony or something, I might completely break down crying and just be a mess. And our instinct as good, caring human beings is to rush in and rescue that person. Oh, you're going to be okay, and pat them on the back and all that sort of thing. And while that's good intentioned, that's also disempowering. It's also taking away this person's saying, oh, clearly it's not okay for you to be emoting this way, and I need to fix that for you. I'm going to come here and I'm going to rescue you, when most people don't need that. But when you hold sacred space for them to rescue themselves, essentially, it's so empowering. And it goes, the act of witnessing goes way beyond that. It's just this beautiful, powerful thing. And so I'm very I definitely want to talk to you more about that. I think we could probably do more than an hour. We could probably do a class on witnessing alone.
Yes, and I will add to that the training I just referenced with Animas Valley Institute. It was part learning about counsel, and also the art of mirroring, which is basically based on witnessing, hearing someone's story, and in mirroring, you tell their story back to them from the most
Mhm.
compassionate place, from if you can add in some archetypal energies or imagistic language, poetry, like you tell it back to them. And it is so powerful, John. It's so powerful because, first of all, the other person that has told the story, hearing their story as spoken to someone who has deeply listened to them, it's a very healing technique. It's unbelievable. And the story doesn't have to be anything, extraordinary. It's the fact that someone listened to your story so deeply and is now going to tell it back to you with
Mm.
little nuggets and metaphors that maybe you didn't see as the teller, right? Oh, it's so powerful.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I've got goosebumps from
Yeah.
from hearing that. I can totally see that. And one of the things that I think gets communicated there is this sense of, um, you are important. Your story is important. You are worthy of me taking in your story in a deep way. And we don't always communicate that. And that is, for anybody who comes from a therapeutic background, there's research that something like 85 to 90% of the value of talk therapy comes actually from the relationship with the therapist. The techniques, doesn't techniques schmeckmeeks. I don't know. Right. It's not yeah, that's important, but having somebody who deeply listens without judgment. And I love the idea of mirroring. I definitely want to learn more about that. That just sounds like such a beautiful, wonderful practice. And the phrase "holding counsel," I love every bit of that.
Yes, yes. And in fact, I can't wait to go on my next level 2 Mira training because ideally I would like to be a guide, like be someone who brings people here to Avalon and sets them out in nature to have an encounter with Mother Earth, and then come back to circle, tell the story of that encounter, and then be the guide, be the mirror to tell it back to them. I've sat in several circles like that with a couple of my mentors. It's a game changer. It's so powerful, so deep, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I love the metaphoric work as well. We there's I don't know why I keep coming to this, but there are a number of therapeutic models. One's called ACT, and I can't remember what that stands for. I know A is acceptance and something, but basically it takes the standpoint that humans actually learn through metaphor, right? We learn that through metaphor and simile, like this is like this. Like one of the universals, there aren't a whole lot. There are archetypes and things that are universal, but there aren't a whole lot of sort of completely universal metaphors. But all human beings, in every culture and every language, have a structure where something big is something important, right? So bigness and importance go hand in hand in every culture and every language. And part of that comes from us being fed by adults as babies and saying, like, this is the source of our nourishment, and these are people who are bigger than me, so things that
Wow.
are big are important. And it's almost so obvious that it's easy to overlook that,
Mm.
but that's actually how we begin to learn everything, is that this is like this. So there are all of these
Association. Yeah.
association, yeah, associated memory, associated that sort of thing. So when you can walk into somebody's world with metaphors, even if they're not their own metaphors, even if you're adding metaphoric and archetypal which is why archetypal work is so powerful, because it is archetypal, because it's stuff that everybody has. And I actually think the role of shaman, the role of shaman is archetypal. There is a shaman archetype, because it seems the role of shaman crops up throughout time, and through, across the word is not the same word in every culture. Shaman, different cultures have different words for that role, but that role is so important, and it crops up under the same circumstances, that I actually think it is archetypal. I think it is a very human endeavor. Shamanism, one of the reasons I love it so much is that it is so universal. It appears to be something that crops up in pretty much every culture at some point. Even if they aren't still practicing, they did at some point.
Yep. This whole thing reminds me, John, of a message I received the other night in one of our journey circles with Shamanity. That, and I can share this because it was my journey. The Celtic or Welsh poet Taliesin came to me in the journey, and he said, all shamans are storytellers. And I was like, of course, like, to really share wisdom, if you want to infuse someone with wisdom, if you want to wise point, I call it wise pointing, you tell them a story, because well, first of all, that draws them in.
Mhm.
And I feel like anecdotes have just powerful ways to allow people to connect on that level that you're talking about, that association, metaphor, all of those things are universal. And so I love thinking about every shaman as a storyteller. I
Yeah.
think I agree with that. I'm totally down with that. Yeah.
I'm down with that as well. Yeah, there are, and I mean, I love stories anyway, but particularly the ones that make me laugh. Like, if there's even if the topic is very, like, really serious, and I don't want to I won't I can't share this actual story because it's not mine, but the last time I saw our teacher Dory in person, I mean, we've talked to her over video, but the last time I was in her space, she told me a story about being with her mother when her mother died, and it had such a funny ending that I belly laughed, even though it was a very serious moment of, what was happening at the time and whatever. There was just this poignant there's just this poignant moment in the story that made us, there were a few of us there that we all just started belly laughing. It was just a hilarious moment. And I
Great.
actually, the line that she told me that came from her mother, and I won't repeat it because, again, it's her story. I'm like, that should be the title of your memoir, actually. So I don't I don't know what the title of her, I know she's writing her memoir, which I'm anxiously waiting for, but
I get to be here next week, so I'm very excited about that. I'll ask her.
ask her how the memoir. Wow, that's my mouth is not speaking French. Sometimes my mouth can speak French, but not today. Memoir. Yeah. So, speaking of community, we've mentioned Shamanity a couple times, and I want to not just be this complete pitch fest here, but I do want to talk about it because I'm so proud of what we've done and what we're doing and the community that's growing up, that I do want to talk about it. And if anybody's interested in this, if you practice shamanism at all, definitely I'll put a link in the show notes for you to follow through, but it's shamancommunity.com. Pretty straightforward. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the idea and also where the idea came from. And you really like push things forward and sort of started this idea. And then I was like, well, I've got some nerd skills. I can put some technology together and stuff. But let's talk about what it is and where it started and why we're really proud of it.
I am so proud of it. And it's funny, I was just going to offer another class. John took one of my classes in March this year on Zoom. It was called Click My Heels. I just needed community. I was craving community, and I had a few things I wanted to try and teach. So, I just opened this class, and then when the class was over, I was like, oh, where's my Thursday night peeps? How can I recreate this? So I had the idea of maybe doing a bi-monthly class, ongoing bi-monthly class. But I really wanted a co-host. I didn't want to do it on my own. I wanted a collaborator. I think as we move more and more into this age of Aquarius, Aquarius rules groups, rules what is best for all is the best, and not, these solo ventures are sort of going by the wayside. So I wanted someone to collaborate with, and I I put the call out in my newsletter, and John got back to me. You got back to me, John, and I was like, yes. And so we were sort of off and running on this project of creating not just a class twice a month, but rather an online community of shamanic practitioners and students of shamanism, people that were just getting turned on to it, to create, the Zoom temple, the place, the platform, the spot where you can land to read an interesting article, tune in for the journey circle. I have the shamanic coffee clutch on Saturday morning, where we have a bit of counsel, just like get things off your chest, and let's talk about things that we can't talk about with people that don't understand shamanism. And I love the presentations that we've been doing. I love the interaction that I have seen. I feel like there's a lot of potential there too. That's really exciting. You want something that is near and dear to your heart to always grow. You want it to expand. You want that broader arc, the long view. And I feel like our platform and our community definitely has that potential.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been amazing. We only launched it. We're only 2 months old, really. And, we were sort of thinking, okay, well, and I was thinking when I saw this email from Mary Katherine, I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I definitely want to do something. And I'm missing community as well with the pandemic. A lot of the events that I would have gone to normally were canceled, and a lot of us were feeling kind of isolated. And so I thought, well, instead of just a bi-weekly or bi-monthly or whatever gathering, let's create a circle. Let's create a sacred container for people who practice shamanism, whether they've been doing it for 30 years or 30 days. As long as they have some shamanic training. We're not teaching intro to shamanism there, but there's everything. We have all kinds of events, from social stuff like the coffee clutch. We do regular journey circles, so we get together and journey together, which is incredibly powerful. When you journey with other people, even if you're not in the same room, you get carried on their wave of conscious energy. And the only way I can, well, we'll tell a little story about that in a second, but we, and there's also interaction, so you can meet people, and a lot of people who are really active. There are, people who are my student or your student who have joined the community, and joined because I don't know anybody other than you who does shamanism that I can even talk to about having these experiences that I'm having,
Yeah.
where they, okay, I journeyed and this happened, or I doing this and I'm seeing these nature spirits, or, whatever. You can't really, as we talked about, you can't really go to work and sit around the water cooler and say, well, I was journeying the other day and I ran into this troll in my backyard, and you're gonna get a visit from HR or something. And so it's a space for that, and we do practice together, which to me is really beautiful. Like I love the journey circles. I love to be together with other people, either journeying or leading a journey. And if you've ever journeyed on your own but have not journeyed with other people, it's hard to describe how much more powerful it can be when there are other people journeying with the same intention at the same time that you are. It doesn't have to be the same time, because you can get the same effect by watching a recording of a circle. As long as the intention of connecting to the circle is there, it's very powerful.
Yep.
And I wanted to tell, there was kind of a little bit of a funny story that happened in one of our journey circles. And I was hosting the circle, so I wasn't journeying. Generally, I don't journey when I'm hosting, because I'm making sure that the music is playing and making sure that the recording is going, and just keeping an eye on things in ordinary reality. So I don't journey, it's nice that Mary Katherine leads journey circles and I lead journey circles, because I want to journey with people too. So I can go to Mary Katherine's journey circles and journey with others on her behalf. And so I started the music, we started the journey, and as soon as it happened, like I started getting a vision that came through my head, and I couldn't really make sense out of it. And so I always have a pad of paper near me and pencils and stuff, and I just grabbed my pad of paper and I drew really quickly what I was seeing, and I didn't have much of an explanation for it. And then the journey, the journey music ended, and people came back and took some notes and whatever. And Mary Katherine started describing part of her journey, an important part of her journey. And and you can say, but it was literally the thing that I just drew.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that journey was so powerful. First of all, we were journeying to Prometheus to find our Promethean gifts. So John gave this awesome little mini lecture on the mythology of Prometheus. And then we entered the journey time. We did our journeys while John held space. And I guess I was due. I went on all kinds of tours and had a dismemberment, and my dismemberment power animal is a great white shark. And so I was at the bottom of the sea, sort of getting torn apart. And there was this incredible wind that came from the west in the water. And I was like, how is wind and water? And it created this little dirt devil thing that was a funnel. And it had in the middle of it fire. And Spirit was like, this is what you are. You are the feminine holder of the, the vessel, the watery feminine aspect, but you hold the fire of passion. This is you. And when John, as I was talking about this journey, as we were checking in after, John holds up his sketch pad and he's like, this is what I drew. It looked exactly like the thing that I saw. It was so wild. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
Right. And that's not to this isn't a story for me to brag like I'm doing some psychic thing. That's not it at all. What happens is that even though I wasn't journeying, we're still connected. I'm still picking up on that energy that's going on in the circle, even though we're in different geographic locations, but you're journeying at the same time. I'm caught up in that energy. So that vision is just coming from Spirit, and it's coming from, the energy that we're all, I do liken it when you journey in a circle to being sort of like when you did that, if you've ever done this thing when you were a kid, when you were in a pool and you got everybody moving in the same direction, and it kind of creates this whirlpool and current and in a pool. It's kind of the same thing, but on a spiritual level. It's like everybody's creating this vortex of journey energy. And so you're riding this wave that has this perpetual motion. And it's one of the beautiful things, is one of the reasons why I love journeying. And I love journeying on my own, but journeying in a group is, even if it's 2 people, is really, really fantastic. But as you add people, 2, 3, 4 people, I think the biggest I've done, I can't remember, was I did soul retrieval training in Kripalu, and it was a really big group, like 80 people or something like that. It's really, really, really powerful. And that is one of the reasons to come together in community when you practice shamanism, to, to experience that, to experience the ability to journey as a group and ride that spiritual wave. I didn't have to, it was cool. I didn't have to do anything. I was just along for the ride, just, hang 10.
Yeah, that was really, really wild. And, I was sitting here thinking about, maybe it was, we're both fond of Prometheus. Maybe it was one of his little trickster moves.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, Prometheus is definitely one of the penultimate trickster gods. So, tricked Zeus and stole. He's very, if you're not familiar, very much like Loki, and always tricking the other gods, and doing stuff. So certainly could be that energy going. Well, we've been chatting for nearly an hour. Oh my goodness. I feel like we could go on forever. Well, you and I know we could go on forever, and there's all kinds of things to talk about, but I wanted to sort of wrap up, and just, so people can get a chance, if they want to find out more about what you've got going on, they can check you out on Nine Pillars Healing, and it's the number 9, right?
No, it's actually NINE spelled out. So ninepillarshealing.com. And there's, oh man, I have another, like a writer website. I also edit, and I'm a writing coach. So that's MaryKatherineSpain.com. And if you end up there and you wanted 9 pillars, there's a spot on my bio that says, "Are you looking for healing work? Click here," and that takes you over to my other website. So, and vice versa. If you're on 9 pillars and you're like, "Oh, I need writing help," MaryKatherineSpain.com will be there as well. So yeah, that's 2 places.
I will link. Yeah, I'll link to both in the notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll link to it in the description of the YouTube channel, so you can check that out. And if you do practice shamanism, and really the only bar to entry is you should already know how to do a shamanic journey. If the community sounds interesting to you and you don't know how to journey yet, go learn how to journey, find a teacher, look up a teacher. You could contact Mary Katherine or myself, or find another teacher, or find a class in your area. I really am fond of learning journeying from a teacher, whether that's in a class or whatever. It's really hard to learn it properly from a book or something. But find a teacher, learn how to journey, and then come back and check us out. It's shamancommunity.com. Again, there'll be links in the show notes. It's a really cool, amazingly cool community that is growing, and just couldn't be happier about everything there is. There's so much there for content wise, from classes to recorded journey circles to prompts to information about self-care, to just everything we can think of that people would benefit from. And it is growing and developing. Like we're starting to think about doing some group art projects and stuff like that. So come check us out, give us a join. I think you can join with a 2-week free trial, just by coming to the page and clicking sign up, and check us out for a couple of weeks, and come to one of our journey circles and see for yourself how amazing it is to journey with a group of like-minded people. Yeah. So anything else before we end? Anything you'd like to add or subtract?
Other than I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today. And thank you also for all the sacred service you do. in the world, John.
Oh,
I feel like the other kind of pillars, the torchbearers, those that are holding the light, rise up. It's time. Get out of your
mhm.
shell. Come on out. Join the party, because the time is now, folks.
Yep, no time like the present. All right, so I'll sign off. You'll hear my outro, and then we'll stop recording.
So-
You have been listening to Speaking Spirit with your host, John Moore. For more info or to contact John, go to maineshaman.com. That's MAINESHAMAN.com.